Thanksgiving may be our most traditional holiday. We serve many of the same foods that our grandparents did. The kitchen is alive with the aroma of turkey, pumpkin, and cranberries, truly American foods. We gather with family and special friends to give thanks for our many blessings. I invite you to watch at-home entertaining to give you ideas, help you serve a delicious dinner, and have a holiday filled with good memories. Thanksgiving first began as an American festival to celebrate the harvest. The Pilgrims and the early settlers added thanks as a religious holiday. President Lincoln declared Thanksgiving a patriotic holiday. Now, we have optional recipes, and they're on the card that you received with the video. They're from Savory and Simple Cooking Cookbook, and the Savory Seasoning Herb Blends are the blends that I'm going to be using today. Pull out your menu card, pull out your recipe pack, get a pencil, and follow along with me because I'm going to give you some helpful hints. The first recipe that we're going to make is sweet yam and pear bisque. It's a delicious combination of flavors. We took the pears and the yams and I cooked them until they're tender. Then, following your recipe, we pureed them in a blender, and there's just a portion of it here, and you can see how soft it gets and what a nice color that is. This really sets the tone for your dinner when you start with flavors like this. You're going to do the pureeing to all of the vegetables and all of the pears. You're going to add this amount of milk to the whole pan when you put it back in a saucepan. I'm just doing a small amount because I want you to see what it's like today. Now, we would put this back on the stove and warm it up so that you can have it pureed ahead of time, put in the refrigerator, bring it out at the last minute, warm it up, add your milk, and then we're going to serve 8 bowlfuls. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to add just a dollop of yogurt to it. That'll set that off in the middle. Some fresh thyme that's flowering, that's wonderful. It gives us those flavors. Be sure when you put the soup back on after you've mixed the pureed soup and the milk, you don't let it boil because it may curdle. Let me clear this up. Then I'm going to show you how to do some vegetables. On your recipe sheet, it's the fall vegetables julienne. And it's very important when you're doing this that you do not overcook them. Keep them fork tender, and I'll show you what fork tender means. Fork tender means that they're crisp to the taste, crisp when you put a fork in. If you like them softer than that, go ahead and make them softer. It's just that this adds a crunch to your meal, adds bright color to your meal, because most of our Thanksgiving foods are very soft to eat. That's just kind of the tradition of those foods, and we want to add some of that crunchy texture and bright color. Once this comes to a boil, and can you see what I've added here? The chicken broth, instead of a lot of fat, added a little bit of butter for flavor and some brown sugar. We're going to put this together, cover it up, and what will happen is that the broth will steam through the vegetables, which will make them very nice. I'm just going to check my recipe here and add some of our garden blend. We add the garden blend because it gives us good color and that good, nice garden vegetable to the vegetables. I'm going to put a cover on this. You would do this point while you're eating the soup. Have it ready, cover it, eat your soup, and then your vegetables will be done just right. The next thing that I'm going to show you is how to do creamy mashed potatoes. If you peel the potatoes early, cover them with cold water. Rinse that cold water off, then add fresh hot water to boil them. And I'm going to do one other thing. I'm just going to keep moving my pans around here. There you go. So that we can watch that cook, but I don't get out of your way. Now, we've had the potatoes boiling, and they are going to be fork tender. Let me show you what fork tender means. Fork tender means that the fork goes in easily, but they're not mushy. They don't fall off the fork when I take them out. So what we're going to do is immediately drain them, And you would do this in your sink. I'm going to do it here over a bowl so that you can see what we're doing. And I'll do just a few. But as soon as they're done cooking, the most important is that you drain them immediately and you get that starchy water off of them. That's what's important. And that cold water that we're going to put over, that cold water is going to stop the cooking. And yes, it will cool them down, but it will also get that starchy water gone. You don't like to have glue potatoes, do you? No. So this is what you do instead. We'll put them in our bowl to match them. Now, when I'm mashing them today, I'm going to add just a little bit of butter for flavor. And I'm going to add some cream cheese. It's the cream cheese that gives a smooth texture and a creamy flavor to them. It's also nice because if you have your potatoes peeled and ready ahead of time, and then you mash them, see how nice that mashes right up? They're not mushy at all. They're going to be nice and creamy. You can, with the cream cheese, put them in a casserole dish and put them in the oven. They won't dry out and get hard for you, and that's what happens to a lot of people because they run out of time. We're going to add a small amount of milk. Just add milk a small amount at a time till you get it to the thick or thinness that you want. If you like real thin potatoes, you add more. If you like thick potatoes, of course you add less. But when we come back and meet in our dining room at the end of our video today and we have the table set, I'll have the rest of the potatoes mashed for you so that you'll see what a whole bowl looks like. I'm going to turn down the vegetables because you can see they're starting to boil in here. And that steam is coming up, and what's actually happening is the vegetables aren't boiling. The broth underneath is boiling and steaming up through them so that you get all that good crunchy flavor and nutrition still in. The next recipe I'm going to show you is for cranberry cornbread. You have some made up here. This recipe is adopted from the cornbread recipe in the Savory and Simple Cooking Cookbook. You can open your cookbook if you have that and follow along with us also. And I'm going to use my recipe so I know what you're doing today. I've taken out the whole kernel corn and added chopped cranberries instead. So, we've greased a 9-inch pan. We've set the oven to 450 degrees. And I'm going to melt the butter and the buttermilk and the butter, couldn't think of what that was, together in a pan ahead of time. And we're going to add that and the eggs and the cranberries to the dry ingredients. Now, make sure you don't get any shell when you crack your eggs. And we always crack eggs into a separate bowl first, and you do that so that you don't have any shell or any bloody eggs in there. It's also nice when you're doing a quick bread, you can whisk them together and blend that first. We'll whisk it in with our bread mixture so that that's all combined before we begin. In the dry mixture, I'm going to make a well in the center, all the way around. And in that well, we'll pull our liquids. And I'm going to start to stir that. Okay, just twice around. And then I'm going to turn off the cranberries. Turn off the vegetables and add the cranberries. This is just like at home, right? You forget what you're doing. And I'm going to stir this. And let's do it fewer than 20 times because it's a quick bread. And you know that quick breads that are leavened with baking soda, baking powder, and eggs don't like to be worked like a yeast bread does, that you have to work that gluten in a yeast bread and get it to rise. Here you want to stir very gentle, and I'm doing it all the way around the bowl in a nice ring action rather than small little jutting moves in the bowl. And that's fewer than 20 times. We'll turn it out into our pan and we'll bake it. Now if you have a few places that are drier, don't worry about them because that will bake right in. Also, a lot of people will take a quick bread, they'll put it in a pan and they'll start pushing and pushing and pushing it. You don't want to do that because you've started the action of the baking powder, baking soda, and eggs. When you're done, your cornbread's going to look just like this. It's going to be nice and even all the way across. It's not going to be raised in the middle. It's not going to have any big cracks in the middle. Quick bread will often get some small cracks in it, and that's pretty normal, so you don't worry about that. We'll set this aside, and then we'll bake it out again so we have some more. The next recipe that I'm going to show you is cranberry sauce. Cranberry sauce is really a very traditional Thanksgiving. Where would we be without it, really? It adds a flavor that we all love. It's a sauce that we keep looking for and kind of expect with our foods. But many people buy sauce in a can because they don't know how to make it. This one's very simple. The recipe uses orange juice. You can use fresh orange juice if you want to, or you can use orange juice that you've purchased. I like to combine the juice and the sugar often in a glass bowl and microwave it for 2 or 3 minutes. If you have a microwave, that will dissolve the sugar. Then you add the cranberries, cover it tightly with saran wrap, and microwave it for 3 to 4 minutes until the cranberries just start to pop. Let it stand covered until it's cool without stirring it, or the cranberries will mash up. That's a very convenient way to microwave and make cranberry sauce. That way you can make it 1 or 2 weeks ahead, and you can serve it at all your meals. My family laughs at me because I make cranberry sauce all year long. I buy the cranberries now when they're fresh in the market and they're whole, and freeze them right in the bags, rinse them off, and I eat cranberry sauce with almost every meal. This is hot, so the juice is very thin. As it sits up in the refrigerator, it's going to thicken. If you say, oh, but I don't like whole cranberries, I like it popped, then take your spoon against the side of the pan and just pop a few, and you'll see that they're nice and tender, and they'll pop down for you. That gives you the version of having them whole, or you can have them more popped. Another idea that's not on your recipe card, but they will add, is some raspberries. You can add fresh raspberries, add them after it's cooked, because that gives flavor to it, and just another little tart taste. We'll spoon some in our bowl, and we're going to then, before we come and eat, you can see what that looks like, we're going to spoon them all out. Now, to the most important, and the most important, of course, at Thanksgiving is the turkey. Let me clean this up and we'll show you how to get that bird ready. We have a 14-pound fresh turkey. Fresh turkey is becoming very popular. It's low in fat. You baste it with what you desire, and there are some optional bastings that are given in the recipe. I've chosen currant jelly. You can also oil the bird. You can also use the fresh herb vinegar that we're going to show you how to make today, and put that on and then put the herbs on. Use cranberry sauce, use orange juice, use raspberry jelly, honey, maple syrup. Make sure it's warm so that it spreads evenly, and that's what you want all over. We're going to add some of the poultry seasoning. That will give the bird just that extra flavor. And you know, the seasonings are all combined with 4 and 5 different blends made especially for you. They're all natural. They have no MSG, no added sugar, no added salt, and no cayenne pepper. So if you're allergic to those items, you're okay with savory seasonings. We're going to sprinkle that evenly all over the bird. Now, I like to blend the herbs and use different ones. So if you want a little bit more color, add some of the garden blend. See what that does to it? Isn't that lovely? We brush the whole bird. We're going to stuff some celery leaves or parsley or whatever you want in the cavity. Always remove the neck, throw it away. Make sure that the bird has been washed and patted dry. Then we're going to stuff this in. If you buy a fresh bird, buy it 1 or 2 days just before you're going to roast it. If you buy a frozen bird, thawed in cold water for 30 minutes per pound, or in the refrigerator for 24 hours for each 5 pounds. We'll truss him up, get him ready. And there are a couple different ways that you can do it. You get a trussing kit often when you buy your turkeys. I like to do it very simple, and that's just taking wooden skewers to hold the wings in. See, I like a little bit of air to flow around the turkey when you're cooking it, because what happens otherwise when you truss it so tight, everything comes together and you don't get all that finished cooking in there. You also don't get as much crisp skin, and that's what's so good. We're just going to tie the legs together, and the reason we tie the legs together is that they don't fly open and you get a better formed bird when it's finished roasting and you'll like to serve that at the table. And so what you can do then is to put your meat thermometer in the thickest part of the thigh. Okay? You don't touch the bone. You put that in. We put the bird on a rack. We put the rack in a shallow roasting pan. Now the recipe that I tell you in the recipe cards says to roast at 425 degrees for 30 minutes. We're going to do that first, and then we're going to turn the oven down to 325 and roast it for 2.5 to 3 hours till it reaches the internal temperature of 180 to 185 degrees. We roast for about 12 to 15 minutes a pound. Let me just put the bird in the oven. We'll set the temperature to 425. Here we go. Make sure the rack is on the lowest rung of the oven so that the bird will fit in. Some people like to cover their bird with foil. I like to baste it every 30 minutes. Remember, we're roasting at 12 to 15 minutes a pound. We're going to remove it from the oven and let the bird stand for 10 to 15 minutes before carving it. That's a good time to garnish the platter. Now we'll stuff the cavity with your choice of dressing. That adds 5 minutes per pound to the roasting time. The internal temperature of the dressing on the meat thermometer should reach 165 degrees. Use approximately 9 cups of stuffing for a 12-pound bird, and you stuff it just before roasting. Don't stuff it early and let it stand out. Plan 1 pound of turkey per serving for a 12 to 14-pound bird, and plan 3/4 of a pound of turkey for a larger bird. Remove any stuffing, then immediately refrigerate the turkey after eating. Don't let it sit on the counter to keep nibbling at it all day. I'll be back to show you how to make gravy after the turkey is roasted. The turkey is roasted on the platter and garnished. Isn't it lovely? Next, I'm going to show you how to make turkey gravy. Take in the pan juices and put them in a defatting cup. You'll notice that the fat comes to the top and the spout is quite low, so when we pull it out, we get the pan juices, but the fat stays in. Now you can use water, wine, apple juice, or cranberry juice, whatever you want. To the cold broth, I'm going to add the cornstarch. This is different than you may have done it at home. I like doing it this way because I won't get lumps in the gravy. Next, I'm going to add the defatted pan juices. And then we're going to pour this into our saucepan and cook it over medium-high heat until it becomes clear. It's going to boil, and once it's boiled, then the gravy is going to clear, thicken, and become smooth. And that's what we want to happen. It's important when you're doing this at home that you do it in the last minute so that you can keep stirring it constantly. While that's getting hot and starting to get hot, I'm just going to bring up the making so that I can show you how to make the pumpkin praline pie. First, we'll start with our pie crust. Once again, it's important to roll it out on a board separate than you use when you're doing meat. This is an interesting dessert because it combines the flavor of the pecan pie with your Thanksgiving favorite food, and that's pumpkin pie. Also, it's not as rich as eating a whole piece of pecan pie. I'm going to come back periodically and stir the gravy because I want you to see this to get thick and clear. We'll roll this out. Now, I use a flour shaker, and I use a flour shaker for the reason that when you take flour with your hand and dump it on, you get so much, and you want this just to be very light. We're going to pat this in our 9-inch pie plate, making sure that it fits all the way down into the corners. Always wash your hands so that they're clean when you start. And if you were at home, you know what you do with one of the children? You'd have them stirring the gravy because they just keep whisking away at it. We'll turn it up a little bit. Now, because I'm not going to put a top on the crust to turn it under, I'm going to just turn it under by itself so that I can make a nice lip. I'm not real even here because I'm not taking the time to be. You will be, I'm sure, when you're at home. And then do whatever kind of edging you tend to do. And I think we do the edging that our grandmothers did, right? That we learned when we first started to cook. This is an easy way, and that's taking 2 fingers and one between, just pulling back and forth. Then we'll spread in the praline layer. Now, this is what just adds that extra unique flavor to it, which we'll like. And we'll spread that all the way through. This pre-bakes. Get out your recipe card that comes with the video. And that recipe card will tell you for how long it pre-bakes and what to do with it. After you take it out of the oven, can you see our gravy is starting to cook? We're not going to have lumps because I mix the cornstarch with the cold broth first, and then we keep stirring it. The pumpkin pie filling, nice and smooth. Once you've baked this, then you'll put your pumpkin pie filling on the top. When that's almost finished baking, then what you'll do is come along and garnish it like I have here, putting the pecans in a circle all the way around, putting them around the edge, whatever you'd like. When we get to our dessert, I'll cut a piece so that you can see how it sits out. And I have to keep stirring this gravy because it's not quite boiling. If I turn it up, maybe it will. And as it boils, just in an instant, it will turn clear and thicken for us. Now, also included in your recipe cards, our recipe for the cream cheese pie pastry. It's a nice light pastry. It's a good recipe for people who really haven't made pastry very often because you can roll it out, you can work with it gently, and the pastry won't toughen. Remember, don't put too much flour on your board, and always use a separate board for rolling out your pie pastry than you do for cutting your meat. And I don't know if you can see in here, but the edges are bubbling. The center is going to start to bubble, and now it'll come to a gentle roll. I'm going to whisk it. Can you see that this has become thick, clear, and lovely gravy? Now I'm going to turn it off at this point. You don't want to overcook it. You want to just cook it till it gets to this point. Stop. We'll put it in our gravy boat. When I come back, I'm going to show you the dining room, how to set out your centerpiece, and how to set out your china. Let me change clothes, get the food ready, and I'll meet you back in a minute. The Thanksgiving at Home postcard invitations can be sent after November 1st. 2 to 3 weeks is appropriate. When a dinner is served, an RSVP date should be noted on the invitation. I'm going to show you herb vinegar, which is your take-home Thanksgiving favor. Pick a pretty jar like this one, push the herbs in, and then pour steeped vinegar or fresh vinegar into the jar, put the cork on top. Do it 1 or 2 weeks before Thanksgiving so that when they take it home, they can use it. The centerpiece is just ready for Thanksgiving Day. Small pumpkins, squash, acorns, leaves, greens, status flowers, pine cones out, a little bit of arrangement to carry out. And I've built all of the centerpiece in a grape ivy vine wreath. If you have one at home, you can, or otherwise you can buy one. I lightly sprayed it gold just to pick up the flavor. And underneath there's foam so that you can take nuts, put them on a stick and stick them in. Also, it helps to raise up the vegetables so that you can see them. Our place card is kind of a fun. I took small picture frames, painted the edge, the back, and the front of them, and put in a picture. This is my favorite, Auntie Blanche. She's going to be joining us for Thanksgiving dinner, I hope. So do one of each of your favorite people all the way around the table, and that way they know where to sit. The table setting really does set the mood for the dinner, from casual to formal. Pick china and linen colors that blend with, match the food, the room decor, make everything look just special for that day. I want to show you how to set the appropriate table. And that's, we've added our soup first. You often will have a plate underneath or a dinner plate. Our napkin with the dinner fork, knife. Ran out of spoons here. Spoon and soup spoon, so that you're all set. You always eat from the outside in. The dessert fork is right above, so that'll be ready for our piece of dessert. Come in about an inch from the edge of the table. Pick a pretty napkin to go with. Your water goblet or juice glass, whatever you're going to serve, or wine goes right at the top of the knife. Now, this is our cranberry cornbread that we made earlier. Cornbread is really the remembrance of the corn harvest, and that's why we have it. Here's our beautiful cranberry sauce with some orange zest on it and mint leaves. And did you know the first cranberry was reportedly to be picked in 1816 near Cape Cod? Came from a vine filled with berries that grew in a bog. Our julienne vegetables all garnished with herbs and ready. The mashed potatoes nice, creamy, and smooth. And here's our gravy. And if you've ever had lumpy gravy, you follow the tips that I showed you, and you're going to have smooth, tasty gravy just like this. Our pumpkin praline pie, all set for dessert. I'm glad you joined me for at-home entertaining at Thanksgiving. Now, you can sit just as lovely a table in your home as I've shown you here today. Happy Thanksgiving.